You're standing in the middle of a dense jungle in Vietnam. The air is heavy, your heart is pounding, and suddenly the silence is ripped apart by the roar of a machine gun. Bullets are tearing through the trees, hitting the ground, hitting your friends. Everyone is pinned down. No one can move without being shot. You know that if nothing changes, people beside you are going to die. Now here's the question, what would you do? Would you stay where you are and hope for help, or would you do the unthinkable and run straight into the gunfire? In 1965, one man made that choice. He stood up, exposed himself to enemy fire, and ran directly toward a machine gun that was trying to kill him. His name was Joe Marm, and what he did that day would become one of the most fearless acts in American military history. Walter Joseph, Joe Marm Jr. was not a superhero or a movie character. He was a real persona, young U.S. Army officer serving in the Vietnam War. Born in 1941, Joe Marm grew up like any other American kid, but his life would take a dramatic turn when he joined the Army and was sent into one of the most dangerous wars of the 20th century during a brutal jungle battle, when his fellow soldiers were trapped and under deadly fire. Joe Marm did something that few people would ever have the courage to do. His actions didn't just change the outcome of that fight, they earned him the Medal of Honor, the highest military award for bravery in the United States. This is the story of how one man, in one moment of extreme danger, chose to risk everything to save others. Every time someone tries to lift their head, another burst of gunfire forces them back down. In moments like these, fear takes control. Most people would freeze. Most people would wait and hope someone else would do something. But in November of 1965, one young American officer did the opposite. He stood up in the middle of that deadly chaos and ran directly toward the enemy gun that was trying to kill him and his men. He didn't have a shield. He didn't have backup. He had only his courage and a grenade. His name was Joe Marm, and in that single moment, he made a choice that would define the rest of his life. This is not a movie scene. This is not a legend. This is the true story of a man who ran toward death so others could live. Walter Joseph, Joe Marm Jr. was born in 1941 in the United States, long before the Vietnam War began. Like many young men of his generation, he joined the Army believing in service, duty, and leadership. By the mid-1960s, the Vietnam War had become one of the most dangerous and controversial conflicts in American history. Joe Marm was sent into that war as a lieutenant, responsible not only for his own life but for the lives of the soldiers he led. Being an officer meant making hard decisions, sometimes in just a few seconds. Under extreme pressure, Joe Marm was not famous. He was not a general. He was a young man doing his job in a place where death was always close. But one day, in the middle of a fierce jungle battle, he would do something so brave that it would earn him the Medal of Honor, the highest military award in the United States. His story is not just about war, it is about leadership, sacrifice, and what it means to put others before yourself when it matters most. In November 1965, Joe Marm and his unit were moving through the thick jungles of Vietnam when they suddenly came under attack. The enemy was well hidden, using the trees and the terrain to their advantage. One enemy machine gun in particular was devastating. It was positioned in a way that allowed it to fire directly at Marm's platoon, keeping them pinned down. Soldiers couldn't move forward, and they couldn't retreat. Every second they stayed there, more lives were at risk. Joe Marm quickly understood the situation. As an officer, he knew that waiting meant death. The machine gun had to be stopped. But there was a huge problem. The enemy position was out in the open, protected by heavy fire. Anyone who tried to approach it would likely be shot. Still, Marm made a decision that changed everything. He chose to attack the machine gun himself. He got up and began running toward the enemy position. Bullets were flying past him. At one point he was hit and wounded, but instead of falling back he kept moving forward, pushing through the pain and the fear. With a grenade in his hand, Joe Marm reached the enemy machine gun nest and threw it into their position. The explosion destroyed the gun and eliminated the threat. Because of that one action, his men were no longer trapped. The deadly fire stopped. Lives were saved. Joe Marm had turned the tide of the battle, not with superior weapons or numbers, but with pure courage. What he did that day was almost beyond belief, but it was very real, and it would soon be recognized as one of the bravest acts in U.S. military history. Joe Marm survived the battle, but he was seriously wounded. His bravery, however, did not go unnoticed. For his extraordinary actions, he was awarded the Medal of Honor, the highest and most respected award in the United States military. This medal is given only to those who go far beyond the call of duty, risking their lives to protect others. Joe Marm never ran toward that machine gun to become a hero. He ran because his men needed him. He ran because someone had to stop the gun, and he chose to be that someone. His story reminds us that true courage is not about being fearless. It is about being afraid and still doing what is right. Joe Marm could have stayed down like everyone else. Instead, he stood up, knowing it might cost him his life. That single choice saved many others. Today, his name stands as a symbol of sacrifice, leadership, and bravery, and his story continues to inspire people around the world to remember what real heroism truly looks like.